every miracle Jesus performed, and what they were really trying to tell you. A servant stands in the corner of a crowded courtyard, holding an empty clay jar, and he is about to become the first human being on earth to watch God break the rules of his own creation. He doesn't know that yet. Right now, he only knows he has a problem. The wine has run out. It's a wedding in a nothing town called Cana, in the hills of Galilee, and running out of wine at a wedding here is not a small embarrassment. It is a family shame that people will remember for years. The host is sweating. The bride's family is whispering. And a woman named Mary quietly walks over to her son and tells him there is no more wine. You know what happens next. You've heard it 100 times, but slow down and stand where the servant is standing. Jesus points to 6 stone jars, the big ones, the ones used for washing, not drinking. He tells the servants to fill them with water. So they do, to the brim, cold well water, sloshing against stone. Then he says, "Take some out and carry it to the man running the feast." And here is the detail nobody tells you. The master of the feast tastes it, and he's amazed, and he pulls the groom aside to compliment him, and he has no idea where the wine came from. The Bible says it plainly. Only the servants knew, only the people holding the jars. The first miracle Jesus ever performed, he performed almost in secret, in a corner, for an audience of nobodies. And that is strange, because if you were God, and you had just stepped into human history with power over the physical world itself, wouldn't you announce it? Wouldn't you do it in Jerusalem, in the temple, in front of the priests? He didn't, and he would keep not doing that. Again and again, he heals someone, and then says the same 3 words, "Tell no one." He raises a dead girl and orders the room to keep quiet. He silences demons before they can say his name out loud. There is a pattern here so consistent that scholars gave it a name over 100 years ago. They call it the Messianic Secret. But hold that thought, because there is one exception. One miracle Jesus performed as loudly as he possibly could on purpose. In public, in front of a crowd, he gathered himself. And that one miracle is the reason they killed him. We'll get to that. But not yet. Because this is not a list of 37 magic tricks. This is not a highlight reel of a man being kind. This is not a random collection of nice stories from Sunday school. This is a case built one impossible act at a time, climbing a ladder from sickness to the storm to the demons and finally to death itself. And every rung of that ladder was Jesus answering a bigger and bigger version of one question: who do you think I am? Here's something most people miss about these stories. In the Gospel of John, they are never once called miracles, not one time. John has a different word. He calls them sēmeion, signs. And a sign is not the destination. A sign is the thing on the road that points past itself to something bigger. A sign that says, water is not water. It's a promise that water is coming. So when John shows you Jesus turning jars of water into wine, he is not asking you to be impressed by the trick. He is pointing down the road and saying, look where this leads. So let's climb the ladder, one rung at a time. The first rung is the human body. There's a government official in Capernaum whose son is dying. Not sick, dying. This is a man with money, with standing, with servants of his own, and none of it can buy his boy one more day. So he does something a powerful man almost never does. He begs. He finds Jesus and pleads with him to come, please, before the child is gone. And Jesus doesn't come. He doesn't touch the boy. He doesn't even go to the house. He simply says 4 words, "Your son will live." That's it. And here is the part that should stop you cold. The father believes him. He turns around and walks home. A full day's walk, carrying nothing but a sentence. And on the road, his servants run up to meet him with the news. The fever broke, and when the father asks what time it happened, it's the exact hour Jesus spoke. Distance meant nothing. The sickness obeyed him from miles away. Watch another one. A man is brought to Jesus who is deaf and can barely speak. And this time, Jesus doesn't heal from a distance at all. He does the opposite. He pulls the man away from the crowd, alone. He puts his fingers in the man's ears. He touches the man's tongue. He looks up to heaven, and he sighs. The gospel actually records the sigh, and he says one word, Ephatha. Mark keeps it in the original Aramaic, the actual sound that came out of Jesus' mouth that day. It means, be opened. And the man's ears open, and his tongue comes loose, and for the first time in his life, he hears his own voice. Sickness, deafness, the body itself. That's the first rung. And already Jesus is doing what no rabbi, no prophet, no healer in Israel's history had ever done at this scale. But stay with me, because the ladder climbs. The second rung isn't a body anymore. It's the weather. It's evening on the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus is asleep in the back of a fishing boat. These are not tourists. Several of the men in that boat are professional fishermen. They've spent their whole lives on this water. They know its moods. They know when to be afraid, and they are afraid. A storm comes down so hard that the waves are breaking over the sides, and the boat is filling up, and these seasoned fishermen are certain they are about to drown, and Jesus is asleep. They wake him half panicked, half angry. "Teacher, don't you care that we're dying?" He stands up in a pitching boat. He looks at the wind. And he speaks to the storm the way you would speak to a dog that's gotten out of hand. "Peace, be still." And the wind stops. Not slows, stops. The water goes flat as glass. And Mark tells us the men were more terrified after the storm ended than they were during it. Because a storm is just a storm. But what kind of man does the weather obey? That's the question hanging in the boat. And they ask it out loud. Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Hold on to that question. Who is this? Because the ladder is about to climb again into territory that made everyone, including his own friends, deeply afraid. The third rung is not sickness. It's not the storm. It's the dark. In the synagogue at Capernaum, on an ordinary Sabbath, a man suddenly screams, but the voice that comes out of him isn't his. It's something else, something using his mouth, and it shrieks at Jesus in front of the whole congregation. "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. And here is the thing you cannot miss. The demon tells the truth. It names him correctly. It announces, out loud, in a packed room, exactly who Jesus is. And Jesus shuts it up. Be silent, he says, and come out of him. And the thing throws the man down and leaves him. Think about how backwards that is. The one being in the room telling everyone Jesus is the Holy One of God, and Jesus silences him. The truth gets spoken, and Jesus refuses to let it stand. There's that pattern again. The hushing, the tell no one. It's happening even with the demons, bodies, the storm, the dark. 3 rungs, and we haven't even reached the part that gets him killed. Before we climb the last part of this ladder, let me say one quick thing, because what comes next is the part that changes everything. So far, you've watched Jesus take command of 3 whole territories. The human body that broke and healed at his word. The weather that went silent when he spoke to it. And the spirit world that knew exactly who he was and obeyed him even while it was screaming. Bodies, the storm, the dark. If this is the kind of thing you want more of the real story, underneath the stories you grew up with, subscribe and stay with me, because the next rung is the one everything has been building toward. And while you're here, do me a favor. Tell me in the comments, which of these first miracles surprised you the most? The wine nobody saw poured? The storm that just stopped? I read them. Now, the ladder has 1 rung left, and it's the tallest one there is. Because up to now, everything Jesus faced could still, in theory, get better on its own. A body can fight off sickness. A storm blows over. But there is one enemy that never negotiates, never reverses, never gives anyone back. And that's the one he walks toward next. The 4th rung is death. And this is where the stakes stop being about comfort and start being about the one thing no human being has ever beaten. Start with a father named Jairus. He's not a beggar. He runs the synagogue. He's a respected man, a man with a title, the kind of man who would normally keep his distance from a traveling preacher. But his little girl is dying. She's 12 years old. And a father whose daughter is dying doesn't care about his title anymore. He falls at Jesus' feet in the dirt and begs him to come, and Jesus starts walking with him. But on the way, he gets delayed, stopped by a woman in the crowd who needed healing of her own. And while Jesus is delayed, the worst possible messenger arrives, people from Jairus' house. And you can hear the flat, final grief in what they say. "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher anymore?" Too late. The two saddest words a parent can hear. But Jesus turns to this shattered father and says, "Don't be afraid. Only believe." And he keeps walking to the house. When he gets there, the mourners are already wailing, and he says something that makes them laugh at him. He says the child is only sleeping. They laugh because they know death when they see it. They've seen a lot of it. He puts them all out of the room. He takes the girl's cold hand, and there's a Greek word the gospel writers use for what Jesus feels in these moments, splanchnisomai. It's not a polite, distant sympathy. It's a gut punch. It literally means to be moved in your insides, the way your stomach drops when you see someone you love in pain. That's what moves him. He says, "Little girl, get up." And she does. She stands up and walks, and her parents are beside themselves, and Jesus, in the middle of the most astonishing moment of their entire lives, gives them a strange instruction. He strictly orders them to tell no one what happened. There it is again. He raises a dead child, and his first command is silence. Now watch what happens in a town called Nain, because this time nobody asked him for anything at all. Jesus is walking into the town, and coming out of the gate is a funeral. A young man has died, and the gospel gives you one devastating detail. He was the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. Sit with what that means in the ancient world. Her husband is already gone. Now her only son is gone. She has just lost the last man who could protect her, provide for her, keep her from destitution. She is following her entire future out to a grave. Nobody flags Jesus down. Nobody begs. He just sees her. And that same word takes over. His insides turn over at the sight of her. He walks up to the funeral, uninvited, and he does something that would have horrified every religious person watching. He touches the open coffin. Touching the dead made you unclean. He does it anyway, and he says, "Young man, I say to you, arise." And the dead boy sits up and starts to talk, and Jesus gives him back to his mother. He stopped a funeral in the street for a woman he'd never met, who never asked. And by now, the crowds are enormous. The word is spreading no matter how many times he tells people to stay quiet. In fact, we know Jesus' reputation as a miracle worker traveled so far that it survived outside the Bible entirely. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing near the end of the 1st century, a man who was not a Christian, who had no reason to promote Jesus, still described him as a doer of wonderful works. Even the outside world remembered him as the man who did the impossible. And then, near Jericho, someone finally refuses to be silenced. His name is Bartimaeus. He's blind, and he's a beggar, which means he sits by the road and is ignored by everyone all day, every day. He hears that Jesus is passing, and he starts shouting, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And the crowd tries to shush him. "Sit down, be quiet, you're embarrassing yourself." And Bartimaeus does the opposite. He shouts louder. He will not be quieted. And Jesus stops the whole procession, calls him over, and gives him his eyes. Do you see the tension building? Everywhere Jesus goes, he's pressing the volume down. Tell no one. Keep it quiet. Be silent. And everywhere, the people who've been touched by him are turning the volume up, because how do you stay quiet about a thing like that? This is the pattern the scholars named. Over 100 years ago, a German theologian named William Redd studied all of this, the constant hushing, the tell no one, the silenced demons, and he called it the Messianic Secret. And people have argued about it ever since. Why would Jesus hide the very thing that proved who he was? Here's the answer the Gospels themselves give you. It was about timing. If the crowds fully understood who he was too soon, they would have tried to crown him king by force, or the authorities would have moved to kill him before the appointed moment. So Jesus kept the volume low. He controlled the clock. Miracle after miracle, he whispered, "Not yet," until the day he decided it was time to shout. His name was Lazarus, and Jesus loved him. Lazarus lived in a village called Bethany, just outside Jerusalem, with his two sisters, Martha and Mary. They were close to Jesus. This was a home he stayed in, a family he ate with. And one day, the sisters send Jesus an urgent message. Lazarus is sick. Come. The message underneath the message is obvious. You heal strangers from across the country with a sentence. This is someone you love. Please, come now." And here is where the story does something that has troubled readers for 2,000 years. Jesus doesn't come. He stays where he is. For 2 more days, he deliberately waits. And by the time he finally starts walking toward Bethany, he tells his disciples plainly, "Lazarus is dead." And then he says something that should stop you cold. He says, "I'm glad I was not there, so that you may believe." He waited on purpose. He let the man die on purpose, because he was about to do something he wanted the whole world to see. By the time Jesus arrives, Lazarus has been in the tomb 4 days. 4 days. In that culture, there was a belief that the soul lingered near the body for 3 days and then departed. So 4 days meant it was over, truly over, no loophole. No, maybe he was just unconscious, dead, and everyone knew it, and the body in that cave had already begun to turn. Martha comes out to meet him, and she's grieving, and she's a little angry, and honestly, who could blame her? "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." And then this practical grieving woman says something like a theologian. She says she knows he'll rise again at the resurrection on the last day someday, far away, at the end of all things. And Jesus looks at her and says the line that the entire ladder has been climbing toward, "I am the resurrection and the life." Not I can perform a resurrection. Not I know about the resurrection. I am it. The thing you're waiting for at the end of time is standing in front of you right now. They take him to the tomb, and the shortest verse in the whole Bible lands right here. Jesus wept. The one who is about to undo death still stands at the grave of his friend and cries. He is not distant from your grief. He stands in it. And then he does the loud thing. Everything before this was whispered. Tell no one. Be silent. Keep it quiet. Not here. Here, Jesus tells them to roll the stone away, and Martha panics, because after 4 days there will be a smell, and everyone knows it. He tells them to do it anyway. And then he prays out loud, and he says why he's praying out loud. He says it plainly, for the benefit of the crowd standing there, so that they will believe. He is not hiding this one. He has gathered witnesses. He wants every eye on that cave. And he calls into the dark with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And the dead man comes out, still wrapped in his grave clothes, stumbling into the sunlight, alive. Now here is the part that resolves everything I told you at the very beginning. For 3 years, Jesus muffled his own miracles to control the timing. Tell no one. Not yet. And I promised you there was one exception, one miracle he performed as loudly as he possibly could, on purpose, knowing what it would cost. This is it. And the Gospel of John tells you exactly what it cost. Because right after this, right after Lazarus walks out of that tomb in front of a crowd of witnesses, the religious authorities hold a meeting. And in that meeting they decide, finally and officially, that Jesus has to die. This miracle, this one. The raising of Lazarus is the event that seals his death. Do you see what he did? For years, he whispered, "Not yet," to protect the clock. And then, when the hour finally came, he performed the one miracle guaranteed to get him killed, and he performed it in public, on purpose, with the volume all the way up. He didn't stumble into the cross. He walked toward it. The loud miracle was the death warrant, and he signed it himself. And think about where that leaves you. Everyone you have ever loved, everyone you will ever love, is walking toward the one door that no power on earth can open. Money can't open it. Medicine can't open it. Every human ability we have ever developed runs out at exactly the same place, a graveside and a stone and a silence. And into that silence, at the one wall nobody has ever climbed, this man walks up and calls a name, and the dead answer him. That's the top of the ladder. Sickness, then the storm, then the dark, and finally death itself, all of it, obeying his voice. And then, at the very end, one last miracle. The smallest one of all. In the garden where he's arrested, one of his men swings a sword and slices off the ear of a servant named Malchus, a man who came in the dark to help drag Jesus away to be killed. And Jesus, hours from the cross, reaches out and heals him, his enemy, his arrestor. The very last miracle Jesus performs before he dies is a kindness done to a man helping to kill him. That's who he was the whole time. So, what do you do with all of that? 3 things. Hold on to 3 things. The first is this. The miracles were never random acts of kindness. Take that idea and set it down. From the water at Cana to the voice at the tomb, they were rungs on a ladder, a case being built, one impossible act at a time, climbing from the body to the storm, to the dark, to death itself. Each one asked a bigger version of the same question. Who do you think I am? The miracles were the argument, and the argument was airtight. The second thing is more personal. Every sign pointed past itself. Remember the word sēmeion. A sign is never the destination. The healed body, the calmed sea, the empty tomb, none of those were the actual point. They were arrows, and every single arrow points at the same thing, not what Jesus can do for your circumstances, who He is in your life. The miracle was never meant to stop at the miracle. It was meant to bring you to Him. And the third thing is the one I want you to carry out of here. He saved the loud one for last. For 3 years, He whispered, tell no one. Not yet. Keep it quiet, controlling the clock, guarding the hour. And when the hour came, He chose the one miracle that would cost Him everything. And He did it in the open, in front of witnesses, knowing they would kill Him for it. He raised a dead man on purpose, because raising the dead was the whole point, and He was willing to die to prove He could. He didn't get caught by the cross. He walked toward it, with His eyes open, for you. So let me ask you, of all of them, the wine nobody saw poured, the storm that just stopped, the little girl told to get up, the widow's son, the friend called out of the tomb, 4 days gone, which one hit you the hardest? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and I want to know which one landed, because it started so quietly. A servant in a corner, holding a jar, watching water turn red and not fully understanding what he'd seen. And it ended with a voice loud enough to wake the dead, and loud enough to get its owner crucified. He could have stayed in the corner. He could have kept whispering forever. He didn't. He raised his voice. And He never lowered it again.